Hi and welcome to another episode of Top Volts, and today we're going to be looking at the differences between these two Porsches. They're both junior Formula Ones, but with a 2-year gap. One released in 1964, which is the C73, which was first released in their 5th edition catalogue. So underneath here you can just about make out the C73. So this is a junior Formula One, and then the next one was released in 1966, which is the C86, if you can just see on there, and this was in the 7th edition catalogue. So initially, first impressions, they look identical. So you got the same exhaust system at the back, the same engine bay with the same air filter. Straight away you can see there's a size difference in the heads. The earlier Scalextrics had the larger heads, but overall the scale's the same, even down to the windshield is the same, but there is some subtle differences, obviously, other than the code on the underside. But when purchasing these cars, that might not be that visible, and it might not be in the information on, say, eBay or somewhere like that you're purchasing these from. But the things to look out for example, on the older Porsche, the seat rest is actually wire, where 2 years later they changed the mold to be a solid plastic. And moving on to the engine bay, the air filter is a separate piece of plastic on the 1964 C73, but in 1966 they changed it to be included into the mold. And if we move to the underside of the car, there's not a great deal of difference in the chassis or undercarriage of the car. In fact, pretty much identical, even down to the raised area of information. The Porsche logo is the same. The Made in England's changed slightly, but overall almost identical. But then we move on to the steering. So the early model, as we've touched on in other videos, have the soldered on braid, which is pushed in from the side of the guide. They changed this on later models. So moving 2 years forward, the steering is now changed to a push-through braid. So from the back, it's soldered on through from the back, and then actually pushed through the pickup, through the guide. So that's the subtle difference between the two. You can often tell this difference by the two, if I move that out of the way, these two brass pads, which are like a wound screw that gets pushed into this, that holds this whole steering mechanism together. And what that did in turn was made the steering a little bit more stiff. So if you look at this one, see they are quite loose. So they made this improvement a little bit later on, and still loose, but a lot more sturdy. Maybe lost a little bit of the realism on the bends because of how loose this was. But all in all, they both work as they should without a problem at all. Maybe this one has a better connection because of the larger, being able to put the larger braids on, where you could on this, but it would be down to your soldering skills really. But overall, underneath, almost identical, all bar the pickup, and the steering has been changed. So moving back onto the wheels. On the earlier models are my favourite wheels on these junior formulas, with the sort of the silver and the centre cap, which I really do enjoy this detail. No doubt later on people probably put these on because they are, in my opinion, the better wheel, because they moved on to this style of wheel, but this has a push-on silver cover. So in a way sort of cheapened really from what it was. So from the all-in-one made silver wheel to a push-on silver wheel, I suppose it made for production sort of cheaper possibly and easier, but that's the subtle differences really. So the differences between these two cars are the fact that on each one looks identical from the outset, but just with the subtle differences that we pointed out, it's just to look for when you're purchasing these cars. And hopefully these tips will help you, like myself, if you're trying to put your collection together, and just ensure that you've got all the different codes that kind of match to the years and whatnot. It's very easy to make a mistake between these two cars. Well, I hope this video has been of interest to you, and thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you at the next one.